making this morning who are Brits but live abroad. A caller earlier who wants to get to his daughter's wedding, hasn't got long left, has been triple jabbed by jabs that are recognised in this country, but will still have to quarantine. Why?
Yeah, so the first thing we've done is to enable people who've been vaccinated here where they can show the status on the NHS app. That's the full NHS app as opposed to the COVID one, or dial 119 and get a piece of paper. And from the 19th of July, we're saying that if you're coming back from an amber list country like France, for example, you would be able to not have to quarantine and just simply take a day 2 test. That's stage 1. That's phase 1. We do want to be able to recognise World Health Organization recognised jabs which have been provided elsewhere. And it's actually just a question of our coming to agreements to be able to recognise their version in Europe called the Digital Pass in order to be able to do the same in return. So I'm hoping to be able to return pretty quickly to be able to do that. Easier from some places than others because in America, for example, there are 50 different systems, one for each state, and it's largely paper-based. So there are more complexities to that.
How long
Easier for the EU.
Understood that, but how long is pretty quickly, particularly for Europe?
Yeah, I don't have a date for you now, but okay. I'll come back and let you know as soon as I do.
Are we talking weeks
but we're
or
working
months?
closely on it. Oh, weeks, yeah.
Weeks, okay. So it could be within the next month or so. You've got some better news for those families.
Yes, absolutely. And look, the total logic is on the side of that. I just thought that since we have already established that we can do this with the NHS app and we can integrate that into our systems for borders, that we ought to get on with doing that now rather than and announce it now rather than keep people in suspense.
I've got lots of questions from a variety of people who are in sort of very different situations that might not have a concrete answer yet. But let me just put to you Philip's position, which is his girlfriend's in Canada. She had her first jab here. She got a second jab in Canada. What does that mean for her ability to come back into the UK quarantine free?
Yes, I mean, Canada is one of those countries where we've yet to get us a bilateral exchange in place for recognising each other's COVID certifications. And that situation is a bit more complicated again, because, as you say, it's one in each location. One of the many issues that we're working through, and it sort of slightly answers your first question as to why we're not able to instantly recognise people travelling in that sort of situation. I should point out none of this is actually in place until the 19th of July. So you have to be fully vaccinated plus wait 2 weeks, because that's how long you have to wait until they're fully sort of activated.
So even if the jabs in the countries that we've been talking about here are ones that are given in the UK, it's still going to take some time, isn't it? Is it, for those jabs to be recognised, which feels very odd to people? Why can't you just go, yep, we're jabbing with Moderna, you're jabbing with Moderna, and you come?
Yeah, no, I mean, look, you make a very good point. You understand that wouldn't immediately appear in the NHS app for obvious reasons. And then there has to be another system in place, therefore, to be able to acknowledge somebody's vaccinated status. It needs to be automatic. It needs to work with the passenger locator form. Border Force would need to be able to recognise it. There are just complexities to work through to get to that situation. And it's one of the things we'll be working on next, having only just in the last day announced that we're going to be able to accept amber list returnees without quarantine.
So I get the NHS app and I can show that to show that I'm double jabbed. Who do I show it to? At what stage of my travel do I show that?
Before you get on the carrier, usually the airline, unless you're coming back from France, where it could be the train or the ship. And that means that you won't be able to board unless you can demonstrate that status. And in order to accept that, they'll look for the NHS app, or people will be able to dial 119 and get a paper version.
So as well as showing the passport to the nice person before you get on the plane, you show the app as well that says, I've got 2 jabs, yeah?
That's it. You need to actually demonstrate that you've carried out a pre-departure test in the country you're coming from, that you've filled out a passenger locator form, that you've booked your day 2 test, and if you're not going to be quarantining, that you've been double jabbed and waited 2 weeks. Now that all sounds very complicated, but actually it will probably work it does. So most people, when they book in, when they check in, they check in online, and it will probably work online because that's how the carriers will ask for the information.
And you might say that this is the responsibility of the carriers rather than yours, but what stops people from doing what I'm afraid some people have been doing to get past the checks at Wembley, which is screenshot someone's COVID app double jab status, share it around and have it on their phone to show people?
Yes, you won't. Of course, you won't be able to do that because your passport has to link up with your with you. So you can't show somebody else's COVID status and provide that information. Usually, I know that British Airways and Virgin, for example, have said they're going to automate this as part of their check-in process. So probably you'll do it before you get to the airport, but you won't be able to upload incorrect information because it's matched against your passport.
Let me ask about red list countries, given the changes that are coming to amber and the double jab. Are Brits who travel to red list countries going to have their hotel fees subsidised if they can't afford them?
No, Brits shouldn't be travelling to red list countries. I should make very, very clear. They're red lists for a reason. The only people who should be coming back from them are British or Irish citizens or people with permanent residence in the UK returning. So we shouldn't continue to see people travel out to red list country. Certainly not for holidays.
But even, the lawyers have stepped in this, as you know, Mr. Shapps. The lawyers have said that this is discriminatory. It is unfair on those people who might have very, very good family reasons to go. It might be a dire crisis. They cannot afford to stay in the hotels. It would cripple them financially. So they need state support. They need that subsidised. You're saying
look, I'm afraid we do have to do the things which protect the country from importing potentially serious versions of the variants of the virus, and we ask people not to go to those countries. Where they do and they come back and they hotel quarantine, I have to tell you that overall the system's already being subsidised, and if anything, the system may have to look at the overall cost of the system. We're not encouraging people to go to red list countries at all.
Does that mean that the price could go up for people who are having
potentially? Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And we're not. People. Look, I'm simply saying. You asked me, should it be subsidised? The answer is actually it's already subsidised. We do not want people to be travelling to red list countries when, in fact, the only people who should be coming here are people who already are there but are returning nationals, essentially.
Just a final one on this, because I realise you've spent an awful lot of time trying to get the system into place, and it's obviously very complicated. But how long will quarantine exist for those who aren't jabbed, for those who either choose not to take it or can't?
Well, so for the time being, we're saying anyone who's been fully jabbed won't need to quarantine from this amber list, and you already didn't from green. You will still need to if you haven't had both vaccinations. Of course, people are getting those very quickly. We've done amazingly well as a country in terms of people becoming vaccinated. Actually, this is another call to people to go and get your vaccination. There'll be a subset of people who are either on clinical trials or for whatever medical reason can't get vaccinated, and of course those special categories will
made it a free choice for people not to take the jab. They will say, well, I've been given a choice, I don't want to take it, and now you're creating a two-speed, two-tier society by doing this.
Well, I'd say on behalf of everybody else who has had their jab, if it's simply a matter of choice not to get it, that I'm afraid this is a price that you would need to pay. You'd need to carry on quarantining, and that's to protect everybody else. There's no reason not to get this jab. It protects people. It protects yourself. It protects other people's lives. As a society, we have less vaccine hesitancy than any other country in the world, and I think we should all be very proud of that.
Just finally on this, is it true, I see the reports, but is it true that the government is considering charging for lateral flow tests in the future?
Well, currently the lateral flow tests remain free of charge. People are able to take them a couple of times a week. I don't know in the longer run how that will operate. That will be a decision once we see where the virus is up to.
You can see, though, how once people have to pay for a lateral flow test, that the idea of testing voluntarily goes out the window then, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's possible maybe that businesses might need to look after that part of the cost, but I don't have further information on that at this time. Okay. And currently, people can get the lateral flow tests, and they don't need to pay for them.
Interesting. We'll watch that one. Just finally, I know you're going to. Obviously, I assume you'll be watching the game on Sunday. I don't know from where you'll be watching it, but maybe you'll be able to get a ticket and get to the stadium. Who knows? Do we deserve a bank holiday? I know the Prime Minister is quite keen on giving us one.
Well, so I'd be probably watching where I've watched most of the rest of the games in my local, as the location will see. And I don't want to jinx this by getting into bank holidays and like, just win the game first, and then we'll worry about it.
Thank you very much indeed for your time. Grant Shapps, you're the Secretary of State for Transport, your Conservative MP for Welwyn Hatfield. We'll come on to some of your thoughts about what you've heard there. Interesting charges for the hotels potentially going up. Maybe businesses asked to pay for lateral flow tests, and all the implications for those of you who choose not to be jabbed on quarantine, how long you're going to be asked to quarantine for on the basis that you've refused to take the vaccine. Come to your thoughts on that in a few moments. First on LBC, the 8 o'clock news.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.